Thank you for joining me for Beyond the Basics, Pear Deck 201. In this session, we're going to look at teacher feedback and takeaway and how we can use Pear Deck to extend that learning and close the feedback loop. So it's not just while you have a live session open, the feedback and the learning continues. Thank you all so much for joining me. We've had such an overwhelming response that normally I would get people to join my class live. However, on this occasion, as there's so many of you, what I'm going to do is on the left, which is the black background here, I have the teacher screen, and on the right, with the white background, I have the student screen. You're going to see me moving between the two, and I'll explain when I'm in the different views and what I'm looking at. Now, let's get started. Who am I? Well, I'm Tracey. I moved to New York City with my husband in 2013, and New York City is my adopted home. I love it here. I've been working with educators and as a consultant for over 15 years. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly how long because I don't want you to know how old I am. I was a teacher trainer, and my youngest students were 5 years old and my oldest students were 90. So if we've got anyone outside that remit, let me know. Now, why Pear Deck? Well, I always think you get people come in and you say what a wonderful product they have. But the way to find out if something's going to work for you is to listen to what the teachers say. And this is all feedback from teachers who are in the classroom every day. Teachers are saying it's super easy, it's engaging, it's interactive. They can get up and running within minutes by adding templates to their existing slide deck, and I know you've seen how to do that in other sessions. It's great for formative assessment. You hear those voices you don't normally hear. Students who don't normally get engaged are getting engaged. You can see their answers. You can go back to them and support their learning. It's a game changer. Student scores have been increasing in some schools. It also gives access for all students. Now, Immersive Reader, for those of you who know it, will be nodding along and saying, yeah, that's a great product. Immersive Reader is inbuilt into Pear Deck. For those of you who don't know it, I'll show you it in a few slides' time, and we'll have a look at it, and I think your mind will be blown. The other thing with Pear Deck is you've got the takeaways, so concepts are not forgotten. Learning can be revisited. Comments can be added and students can develop their work. The next 3 slides we look at are interactive slides, and I'll be looking at the student and the teacher view. So the first one is a mood slide. I always like this slide because I like to know how my students are doing. Because we all know if our students are having a bad day, then they'll perform badly. Or if they're having a great day, I like to know that, because how do I help them recreate that learning? How do I help them actually recreate that environment so we have more great days and they can transfer that learning? The next one is a simple multiple choice question. And the reason I love this is the students don't have to hit submit. They click their answer and their answers come in. And on the teacher side over here, I can show the responses. Now, I've only got one person signed on, so we can see that there's no names, but one person has put 7, and we can discuss whether that's the right answer or not. The next one is the one that I think will blow your mind. So, we may have some fluent French speakers out there today, but just in case you're not, how do you know what this slide is saying? How do you know what the activity is you have to do? Well, this is where Immersive Reader with Pear Deck is invaluable. What it does is it will translate and read aloud. So it will translate any slide and read it aloud. I've used it with parents where I send slides home and they can translate the slide into their own language. They don't have to interact and do anything, but they can translate it. So how do I use Immersive Reader? On the student screen, so this one on the right with the white background, in the bottom right hand corner you may just see down here there's a little book with a speaker. I'm going to click on that and that's going to open Immersive Reader. So when it opens with the text nice and big and I can read it aloud. But that's still in French, so that's no help to me. So I need to translate it to English. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the book in the top right hand corner, and this will give me my options. Now there's lots of options, but we're just concentrating on the translation feature. So I've clicked on the book, and what comes up is it says translate, and you can choose the language. Now I'm going to choose English and British English, because obviously I'm a Brit, but you've got American English, you've got French, you've got Dutch, you've got Arabic. There's multiple languages, and you can either translate by word or by document. We want the whole document translated because we want to know exactly what the task is. So I click on by document, and it now tells me, it says, look at the next puzzle and find as many 3-letter English words as possible. Write the words found on the slide. So I now know what I need to do. So I'm just going to click back, and I can now add text to this slide. Now you can use the pen tool, but I find with the mouse it's tricky, so I'm going to use the text tool. I'm going to make sure I'm using a text color that's nice and obvious, and I just click on the slide and I start typing. So let's say I've got car. Oh dear, my spelling's awful today. I've got car, I've got air, I've got glacier. Oh, I know that's not a 3-letter word. Now, as the teacher, remember this is coming in live into my dashboard. So I can, using the dashboard view, actually send this student feedback. So this is their work that's coming in, and I can say, great, I want to send them some feedback. So this is a great start. Can you think of any word, 3-letter words Now, I love this feature because what it does is it means the students will get that feedback that moment. It's like when you're in the class with them and you're walking around and you see them write something or do something and you actually pick up on it and you give them those little prompts. So it's that instant feedback. So again, I use the speech bubble and now I'm going to send the feedback. Now be warned, once you've sent the feedback, you can't undo it. So any spelling mistakes or anything there stays there. So I'm going to hit send feedback. And you'll notice on the student side, so back on this right hand side here in the bottom right hand corner, a little speech bubble has appeared. And as the student, I click on the speech bubble and a side panel pops up. And it tells me what my teacher said. I can mark it as read, I can close it, and I can go in and I can continue editing. So let's say I am going over to this side now and I'm going to use a different colour so that I come up with some 3-letter words. Oh, my brain's not working. So let's go for rag. I can't see any other, but there are other 3-letter words. You get the idea. As the answers are coming in, I can add more feedback, or I can just close it out on the teacher side. So to add the feedback, I went to the dashboard, I clicked on the speech bubble under the student's name, and I sent them the feedback. So Pear Deck allows me to give instant feedback. It's like having them in the class with you, and you can do this when the session is in student-paced or when the student is live like we are now. But it works really well when it's in student-paced because you see the different answers coming in and you've got the time to go through it. So I'm going back to my presentation now. So that's using the speech bubble. Next, we've got a different form of feedback. So Pear Deck does this instant feedback using the speech bubble, and students can amend their answers as long as the session is open. So if you have hit end session here, the students will not be able to go in and change their answers. But as long as the session is open, students can go in and add to their work. But we've also got a student takeaway. Now, what is a takeaway? Well, a takeaway in the UK is a Chinese takeaway that you might get on a Friday night, or an Indian takeaway, or a pizza. It's when you get food and you go and pick it up. Here, we would call that a takeout. So a student takeaway in this example is a student gets sent a Google Doc after I have ended the session. So as long as I've hit end, I can publish the takeaways. And they get this Google Doc, and in the Google Doc, it has the question and their answers. So let's have a look at a sample takeaway. Now, just to make it easy for you, I'm just going to pop in up here and show it to you. So you can see here is a sample takeaway. So the student has, it's got their name, it's got the session, and it's got their different answers. So this person was feeling fine, it's a world geography, they had 5 choices, but I've added a comment because they said there were 5 continents and there's actually 7. Now I can go in as the teacher, because it's a Google Doc, and add a comment in the exact normal way. So I might go in and add a comment here, either typing it or I use voice dictation a lot. This is a good start, but can you name the rest of them? Don't forget Antarctica. There's a little hint for you. Once I hit done, it will transcribe. This is why I love this extension for me, and I just click comment. I can keep going through the student's work, and I can add more comments. And if I add a comment and I actually put at, so like here I have at half hour, the comment gets assigned to them. You'll also notice under each answer there is a space to take notes. Now I really like this space to take notes because the students can go in and extend their thinking. They can go in and put the right answer. They can go in afterwards and explain why they came to that conclusion. So these takeaways are not just a snapshot. It's where students develop their learning, they respond to your feedback, and they continue to develop their understanding. So we're just going to go back into the presentation session, and I'm going to open both windows again. So that's a takeaway. So some quick facts. How are they generated? Well, they're generated when you click end the session. And I can show you this at the end. They live in your Google Drive and the student's Google Drive. Only the student and yourself get them. So the teacher gets all of the class's takeaways and the student only gets theirs. Both the student and the teacher can edit them. So as I say, afterwards, a student can go in using a different colour and add notes. You can add the comment. You can get them to expand on their feedback. And if any of your students are like mine and don't always go in and check the comments, then I've got a little trick for you. So we've just seen how you add the feedback onto the Google Doc, so you're just adding a comment. But how do we ensure that the students go in and read those? Well, what we can do is in Google Classroom, we can post the link. So what I do is I go into the student's takeaway, let's go into this sample one, I copy the URL or I get the shareable link, so I'm going to get the shareable link, and only people with the link. And then I go back into Google Classroom, I go to the student, I'm under the grades tab, I'm just going to go into this individual student and I'm going to add a personal comment. So here it says the work has been done, view details, but no work has been attached. So down the bottom here I can say don't forget to turn your work in. We all know that's one of the things that students forget with Google Classroom. But I can also add the link and say, please look at my feedback. And this is a great way to get them to know that there's feedback, because they get these personal comments, they get them in their class, and they can go in and have a look at them. So if we go in as a student into Google Classroom, so on the right hand side here, this is my piece of work as a student, and it's got it here. Don't forget to turn your work in. And here is the link to the takeaway, and the student would just click on it. So we can close that loop, we can keep that conversation going, and we can link all our technologies together. How nice is it that they all work together? Okay, let's just go back to the presentation for both the student and the teacher. So why do we want to do this? Why do we want the takeaways? Why do we actually want students to reflect on their learning? Well, you're all teachers. You know it's because we want to develop their metacognition. We want to develop their understanding. Now, I love these open-ended questions, and I like getting the students to go in and under their answers address these questions. So what was the most challenging part of the lesson? Or go back to a question you got wrong. Describe where you went wrong, why, and what you'd do differently. Or even a question that surprised you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Pear Deck has a template, has hundreds of templates, and actually my favourite slide is a Pear Deck template slide, and this is a great metacognition slide, so I'm just going to show it to you. It says, pretend your friend was absent from class today. What would you tell your friend and why? Now, I love this slide, and I always include it in my presentations. The reason I love this slide is it gives me a real insight into their thinking. So you know that comment you made or a piece of learning you didn't concentrate on, maybe that's what really resonated with the student. Or maybe they misconstrued an idea and you need to go back and correct it. Now, sometimes you get an answer you're not expecting, and it really does give you an insight. But once the students get used to answering this question, I really like it because it shows their understanding. And we all know to teach someone, you have to be able to understand it, put it into your own words, and translate your learning. So as I say, this is my favourite slide, and it's actually from the Pear Deck template library. Okay, so we've had the instant feedback using the speech bubble. We've had the takeaway. Now, another way I can use the takeaway is to do what I've done here. As a teacher, I can log in and I can model the answers. So rather than just sending the students in the comments their takeaway, what I can do is I can actually share with them a model answer. And that's what I've got over here on the right hand side. So this is a question and answer session that I went in as the teacher, and I'm just going to open it up full screen for you. And I did before my students did the work so that I could share it with them afterwards. So again, you'll notice you can scroll down, and if there is a blank space, it means I didn't answer it. But here I answered it. So what I can get the students do with this one, rather than actually go in and edit the answers, I get them to go in and explain the answers afterwards. And it means that they've got the right answers, they've got the model, they can work back through it. And if you think about that drawing slide, the thing I love about this drawing slide is it's great for maths and science because you can actually model how you would solve an equation or the steps of solving a problem. It's great for underlining and showing how to highlight different aspects of a text. And again, all I do is I copy that URL. Now I'm going back as a teacher into that classroom and I share it with the students. So I would say, here is my model answer. Please review your work. So I'm just pasting that link in, and again my student has it. And they've got those links easily within Google Classroom, and you can put links in Canvas and everything. That means that they can go backwards and forwards after this piece of work is done. They can look at the answers, they can explain their thinking, and we can really develop that feedback and their learning. Are your creative juices flowing yet? Well, let's see. So this is a drag and drop, and as you can see, I've changed which side I have my positive and negative. I do this to keep my students on their toes, because otherwise they can get into the habit of just dragging it to one place. It's always nice to get them to actually read the question. So yes. And again, I could go back into my dashboard. I could look at the individual's work and I can add some feedback. So clicking on that speech bubble. Now, this is all great. So we've done different types of formative assessment. We've done the speech bubble, the instant. We've ended the session and we've had the takeaway. But before we do that, we could actually embed a Google form so that we get some summative assessment. Let's get some data out of this as well. What I did was I used the website slide for Pear Deck, and you embed a link. So when the student opens it, as you can see over here, the Google form has opened and they can just type in straight away. So it's type in their email address and then we've got a true false. So Pear Deck can only be used synchronously. So all the students working on it at the same time. Is that true or false? Drop your answers in the chat. Great, we know that's false because you guys know that it can be used in student-paced, asynchronously, and synchronously. You can give live feedback on a Pear Deck slide. So can we give instant feedback? Is that true or false? Again, drop your answers into the chat. Okay, true. A Pear Deck takeaway is another name for a takeout, so something you get from a restaurant. A Google Doc with the students' answers on it, or a spreadsheet. That's it, it's a Google Doc, well done. Then I've put a long answer question in, so Pear Deck takeaways help students to expand their thinking and review their work. Now, for those of you who aren't sure with Google Forms, this question will automatically get marked wrong, but don't worry about that. You can go in and change that. And then the last question, teachers can feedback on a takeaway by, and we have to choose all the ones that are right. So, can you add a comment to a Google Doc? Can you send a student a private comment? Can you get them to use the notes, maybe using a different color and drafting in their answers or explaining where they went wrong or expanding on their answer? Okay, guys, you're doing great. Yes, all three of them. Once the student has done it, they hit submit. And look, they can even view their score. Now remember, I told you that long answer one is always marked wrong because it's not marked automatically. But the students can actually see the ones they got right with that immediate feedback. And again, they haven't left Pear Deck. So I'm just going to go back into the double view here. So on the left-hand side, I'm back into my teacher view. And on the right-hand side, I can see I have submitted that Google form. So just to summarize, why do I love Pear Deck? Why is it such an essential part of my toolkit? Well, it takes away barriers to learning. Immersive Reader makes it accessible, and I hear from all my students. I can give them instant feedback using that speech bubble. You know, that nudge you give them when you're in the classroom? You've got the takeaways post-session where the students can go back and expand their answers. Now that could be used as summative assessment, but I like using it as formative because I like them to go in and with a different colour amend their work or explain their thinking. And what about that embedding a Google form for summative assessment? I want to thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. I know it's precious. I'm Tracey, and if I can help, just get in touch. If you have any questions, myself or the Pear Deck would love to help you. The Pear Deck team, would love to help you. And don't forget to let us know or to tweet how you're using Pear Deck, because we love hearing about your stories. Now, the final thing for me to do is to end my session and publish those takeaways. So you know those student takeaways where they get the Google Doc? It's all done automatically. So I click on End Session, and it asks me to name it, but I've already named it, so it's not asking me, and it says publish takeaways. What happens then is I get a link I can share with my students, or I can share it to Google Classroom. Now don't worry, students only see their own takeaway. They don't see anybody else's, so you can safely share that link. Once again, thank you so much for joining me.